Hey everybody, it's Friday, May 2nd. Hope you guys are all having a great day and are getting ready for a pretty productive and awesome weekend. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. Thanks for tuning in. Hey guys, welcome to the Business and Bootstrapping Podcast, where we believe in busting your ass and bootstrapping your startup to build the business and life of your dreams. I'm your host, Matt Ward, and if you enjoyed the show today, please check us out at businessandbootstrapping.com to get more great tips, tricks, and interviews with successful entrepreneurs. Thanks, and let's get started. Hey guys, welcome to the Business and Bootstrapping Podcast. Today I'm super excited to be speaking with Justin Cooke of Empire Flippers. Place to go if you're looking to get a highly qualified, highly vetted business to purchase right now. I wanted to talk to Justin today to get a little bit more of his experience with his entrepreneurial journey and his expat lifestyle. So thanks so much for joining us, Justin.
Appreciate it, Matt. Thanks for having me on the show, buddy.
So you're over in Davao right now in the Philippines, I'm guessing?
I am, yeah. So where are you at?
I'm actually in Atlanta right now, in Georgia. Yeah, in the future I'm looking to get out in Southeast Asia, but not there yet.
Are you? Where would you like to go, you think?
I think first place is probably going to be Chiang Mai, from what I've heard. I've heard some good stuff.
Yeah, it's a good spot. I got bunch of friends up there right now, and it's awfully cheap. In fact, JohnnyFD.com, he just put a listing up. It's like a 14-bedroom mansion with a pool and like everything for like $2,000 a month. Now, that's quite a bit, but you could have like 6 people in there paying virtually nothing for a mansion in Chiang Mai. You
could build a startup hub, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that would be the house to hang out in. It's like 5 minutes outside of town. I've done the we're in Davao, but we travel Southeast Asia a bit, me and my business partner. But I think I'm going to make a move. Like, I have this house here. It's $1,000 a month for this sick house, like 4 bedrooms, 5 bath, really nice. It's in right next to this pool and restaurant, and it's really nice. But I had to buy all the stuff. So I'm not that like minimalist kind of guy who like has, the backpack and can go anywhere. I'm here. And I'm thinking about switching that, man. I've been talking to friends and maybe like I'm thinking early next year. It's still a ways away. I was looking at like villas in Bali. You can rent some sick villas in Bali, even on Airbnb. 3-bedroom, nice private pool, close to the beach for like $1,500 a month, and it's really nice. And I was like, hell, that seems like I could do there 3 months, do Chiang Mai for a couple of months, and just kind of hop around, meet up with friends, and my girlfriend and I just kind of travel. I think that might be kind of fun. I won't do the backpack. I'll have suitcases and shit.
Yeah, actually be there. I kind of want to, I'm the same boat. I kind of want to do like 3-4 months somewhere, not just hopping around like some of these guys are backpacking week here, 2 days there. No, that's too stressful. Just get there for a while.
We did a fun interview with Cody McKibben on fast versus slow travel, and it was a pretty interesting conversation. But yeah, I think I've never really done the full nomadic kind of thing. I think for me, though, I'd be a slow travel kind of guy because there's benefits, man, of knowing the place. The best coffee shops to work at, the best co-locations, the best. You just know where everything is. And if you do every 2 weeks or so, you're constantly, oh, shit, where do I go get food and where do I do this and do that? And
yeah, where's the gym? How do you drive around? What do you do?
Yeah, where do I find everything? I'm actually thinking about, so we have a maid, and like here, it's like she's part of the family, right? She's in the house all the time. My girlfriend, they're friends, like it's a good deal. I was actually thinking about, it sounds weird, but traveling with her. She would love to do it, first off. It's not that much extra money, and she just runs the place. Every time we go somewhere new, she just takes care of shit. That's a luxury you can do in Asia. There's no way. Can you imagine like me talking about that?
It just sound like an asshole. It'd be creepy in the States, yeah.
Yeah, I would sound like some like pretentious rich asshole. Oh, let me travel with my staff, right? But like here, it's totally reasonable. Crazy, man. Asia's crazy.
Yeah, that's why I want to get out there, get some a bit cheaper experience.
You're still in school, right?
Yeah, I'm graduating in less than 2 weeks now, so I'm done pretty soon.
Nice, buddy. So how long until you make the leap?
I don't know yet. Like, I got an e-commerce store that's just not doing shit right now. I don't know. I'm not making any money.
I saw it. It's the you saw like an armory or whatever, right?
Yeah, I did a bunch of research on. I started something else and I screwed that up. I didn't research the market enough to realize the wholesalers wouldn't sell if you don't have a brick and mortar shop and a $5,000 minimum order. So I was like, here's a new idea. I think I can do this. But it's just it's not converting at all.
You're getting the searches, though? Are you getting traffic? How much traffic are you getting a month?
I mean, I'm getting over 50 organics a day. I'm getting over 100, 150 people a day. But of that, I'm converting like 0.1 maybe. And it's just like I got to figure out what the issue with that is.
Do you think, like, are they coming in through keywords that are non-buying keywords? And
yeah, that's part of the problem. Like, I put a lot of blog posts on in terms of like medieval history and stuff like that, and it's just that's not doing it for them. So I'm trying to switch away from that a bit.
We had our outsourcing company. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I put up blog posts that I thought were kind of viral-ish. So I don't know if you remember this, but there were like there's a Cebu prison where they got all the people dancing in a row and stuff. And so I did like a write-up on that, and that had nothing to do with our outsourcing company. I just mentioned Cebu and that thing, and it drove some traffic, but it was totally the wrong traffic. And I thought, well, any traffic's good traffic. Some of them will convert, but that is bullshit. That is so wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been playing around today with Amazon product ads. I heard a bit about those, and my Google PLAs weren't doing anything either, so I can't really figure that out. But
cool. So you've got the podcast going, and why did you start? What was your original purpose in kind of getting this rolling?
So it was kind of like a twofold thing. First of all, I get to talk to some pretty awesome people and learn from them. I want to kind of get more involved in the actual startup and entrepreneur environment, especially if I get over there, knowing people, it'll help, connections. And then possibly, like, really, if I could turn it into a business of somehow helping people, I think that would be super cool. Just creating something that actually helped people get their businesses going and just get out of that 7:30 a.m. to like 8 p.m. grind of corporate America bullshit. I think that would be awesome.
I know a guy that might be interesting for you. His name's Terry Lynn. He runs Build My Online Store. Yeah. I talked to him last week. I love him. His podcast is good. But he's like, I don't know if this is the right thing to say. He's kind of scared to monetize, and he hasn't done much with it. He's got a big audience. He's getting 20, 30,000 downloads a month. But he just hasn't really done much with it. And he pulls all of his subscribers. He's got really good information. But he has this need. He's like, well, if I'm going to do this, I should have my own e-commerce store, and it should be profitable. And I'm thinking, no, it doesn't need to be, man. I mean, you know how to do it. You talk to all the right people. There are things you could offer that I think would be interesting to people without you necessarily needing to have an e-commerce store yourself. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Andrew Warner, right, was interviewing the shit out of people. And he'd had some success previously, but it wasn't like Mixergy was a big success. He just started talking to people that were interesting, and he made a business out of it.
I actually just talked to Andrew. He was my last interview. I didn't realize how big his business got before he made Mixergy. He sold it for, I think it was almost $40 million.
Oh, that big? I didn't know that
it was enormous. He wouldn't tell me how much he actually exited with. He didn't want to get into the numbers, but I mean, it was an internet-based email subscription kind of company that he sold to a VC, I think. So really what I wanted to start off doing before we got too much deeper was actually to start getting a little bit more to know about you. How did you get into entrepreneurship, and what kind of was your segue from the more financial industry into working on your own business?
So, I was entrepreneurial even as a kid. I mean, I was the kind of kid that ran around selling stuff to my neighbors and going door to door, being that cute kid that people would give money to. And then I kind of got away from it. When I became an adult, I ended up joining the Navy, did that for a while, got out of the Navy, went to college, and then became a mortgage guy. My buddy was in the mortgage industry, was making good cash, and so I got into that. So that whole period of my life from being 18 until 26 or so, I wasn't terribly entrepreneurial, even though I had been as a kid. There was a point at which we were in the mortgage industry, and my buddy and I said, hey, why don't we set up our own mortgage company? Why don't we get into business for ourselves? And so we set up, a mortgage business. And it was, I call it a business now, but it was really a couple of us, guys trying to sign up loan officers to sell deals. And that went well at first. We had a VA in the Philippines, and this is pre-Odesk. This is before iPhones. There was a time where Joe and I were in the car, and he was on the Yahoo Messenger on like a Windows mobile phone, and like chatting back and forth with our VA in the Philippines. And we had a moment where we looked at each other and we said, "Wow, dude, this is the future, man. This is crazy. Like, we're chatting with our girl in the Philippines who's helping us build our business. There's something to this. And so our mortgage business ended up failing with the real estate market crashing in 2007, 2008. And, we were a bit gun shy. We had to go get jobs. So I went to go work for an internet marketing company where they sold local SEO to small businesses. And then Joe went off to play poker for a bit. So I was working there for a while. I ended up bringing Joe in, and we were scaling like crazy. We need to hire people, and we're hiring anyone who could come in, anyone with a pulse. And we went back and we said, we've still got something with that Philippines thing, man. We have a Filipino connection, is what we called it. And we ended up outsourcing quite a bit of that business to the Philippines. And eventually we turned it into our own business. We put a proposal together. Joe and I, over a couple of beers, said, hey, we might be able to build a business out of this. Did some napkin math, and then put together a real proposal on a PowerPoint presentation for our CEO, CFO, and sold them on it. And they said, yeah, sure, set up your business. So we basically quit our jobs and started our new outsourcing company based out of the Philippines. So that was a pretty wild transition. Now we were back in business for ourselves.
That's pretty crazy. You just took us on a real whirlwind of entrepreneurship. I want to go back a little bit to the beginning of the story. So you said you started out more entrepreneurial. You were into selling things. You were kind of that kid that was always out there trying to make a living, trying to get his little candy money. And then all of a sudden you went and joined the Navy. What was really your motivation behind this? What were you thinking at the time?
At the time, I'd struggled a bit in high school. I just wasn't all that interested, especially like my senior year. It just didn't really connect with me. I wasn't sure that I wanted to go to college at the time. I mean, I knew that I was supposed to, but I wasn't sure that was a good move. And, I knew that I wanted to see the world. I felt like I was in too small of an area. I didn't like where I was at the time. And I said, I want to explore. I want to do this, especially while I'm young. And I figured the Navy gave me the best opportunity to do that. I can travel. And this is back in, we're talking like 1996. So, there wasn't a lot of options to be kind of a bootstrapping entrepreneur in Chiang Mai or Saigon, or there were people doing it probably, but I didn't know about it. Like I wasn't in those communities, or I wasn't in those circles. And that was a long time ago, right? Pre most of the internet that we know today. So I figured the best way to do that was in the Navy. I could go as a missionary. I could be in the Navy. And so I chose the Navy. And so that got me, I think from then on, traveling and, visiting these, far off lands was really exciting to me. It's really interesting to me. And that kind of got the bug in me to be overseas, to check out the world.
I think it's interesting that you brought up the script, the whole, this is how your life story is going to be. You're going to go to college, high school, then you go to college, you get your job and it's secure and you're married and you buy a car. And this was just something it sounds like you rebelled against. Have you always been kind of a rebel looking for your own path, something different than what the masses seem to want?
No, that's the funny thing. Like, not really. I'm not generally a rebel. I'm not someone who, fights the system. It's amazing. I don't know how it kind of worked out. It's just there must be something in me that is. But I don't feel like I am. And some people are like, I can't, you quit your jobs. You move to the Philippines. You're over there. But it just kind of happened. It just kind of seemed like the right fit for me. But I didn't do it thinking I was rebelling against scripts. I see all of that now. And I see that, like, kind of what was designed for me, I didn't really like that. I didn't want to go down the path of, white picket fence and a couple of kids. Not that there's anything necessarily wrong with that, but it was definitely wrong for me. But I don't normally feel rebellious in that sense. I don't normally feel like I want to kind of buck the system and write my own script. I've just in the last couple of years kind of realized that's what I'm doing. But I hadn't really considered it before. It just kind of happened. Does that sound weird? I know. I should say, oh, no, I wanted to design my own life. But it wasn't the case for me. I don't feel like I'm much of a rebel generally.
No, that's good. None of us want to hear that cliche stuff. We really want to know, kind of go a little deeper and really understand what you were thinking. And I think it's interesting how you'll see some entrepreneurs that were like, oh, yeah, I was like Andrew Warner, for instance. I interviewed him recently, and he said he started up as a kid. He was basically working, selling things, always geared towards entrepreneurism. He knew he wanted to do startups in college, and then he goes and launches a super successful business. And then there's other people, kind of more like you and me, that are more, I don't know, it kind of all of a sudden dawns on you that, wait, this is totally not what I want to do with my life. I want to be independent. I want to travel and create my own business, create my own legacy and lifestyle. That's something I really enjoy, and it's just funny to see the parity between people in similar positions.
I think it's interesting you talked to Tim Conley, and he was saying that he grew up poor. And I think what's interesting about that, my family wasn't poor, but we were definitely blue collar. So we owned one house, eventually two houses when I was growing up, but they're mortgaged, and it wasn't like they owned them outright. So we weren't rich. We were definitely middle class. But I think having that kind of background kind of leads into being more of a bootstrapper. So you respect money a bit more. Maybe it doesn't give you some of the financial traits that some of the more wealthy have or pass down to their kids. But I think that's learnable. What's great for, I think, the bootstrapping community or bootstrapping entrepreneurs is that, they respect money and that they're spending their own money. They want to do it wisely. And so you're looking for ROIs on marketing spend. You're really looking at profit and loss per project, right? Not necessarily kind of your overall business. And I think that's important for bootstrapping.
Oh, yeah, it's huge. You got to know where your money's going to and kind of what you're doing to grow your revenue, to grow. If you don't make money, you're not eating, essentially. So you need to really make sure you're on top of your business. And I think it is interesting how there are entrepreneurs that are raised in the kind of lower. They don't start out as the super rich upper class citizens. They kind of take it upon themselves to grow their business, and then other people that. I guess really what I'm trying to say is it's interesting looking at the profile of an entrepreneur, and also somewhat related, somewhat not. What are your opinions on the number of foreign or basically in the U.S., there's a ton of people that start businesses and they're first or second generation U.S. citizens. Do you think there's some kind of motivating factor behind people that come from different locations or come from different conditions that want to change their life like that?
I wonder. That's an interesting point. And I think, especially overseas, particularly in, I'd say third world countries, the American dream is still alive, especially for the parents of this next generation. So the 40 plus crowd in Southeast Asia, for example, the American dream is still alive and kicking. And what I'm doing right now is shocking to them. But no. Why are you not in the U.S.? Shouldn't you be building your business there? That's where all the money is. And it's shocking. I think the younger kids are starting to get it, though. And so you've got guys in Vietnam, a guy named Tung Tran, who's really interesting, runs cloudliving.com. He's a 19-year-old Vietnamese kid, had never left Vietnam. I ended up meeting him in Bangkok last year in October. And he's starting to crush it. I mean, he's got a huge audience of people in the U.S., 40-something-year-old guys reading his blog, trying to figure out how to build out Amazon sites that he builds out. I'm pretty sure he made, well, I'm not going to say because he hasn't said, but he's made a decent 5-figure profit last month in March. And he's 19 years old, man. It's so cool. So, I think that a lot of the younger first or second generation Americans in the U.S. are doing that because they were, their parents came over maybe or their grandparents with the American dream. And so they're trying to get that in their kids. But I think, some of the kids that are offshore, they're not Americans, are starting to see that entrepreneurial spirit and starting to roll with it, much to the disappointment maybe of their parents. But yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's a huge point, actually, the whole family dynamics of starting your own business. Did you have any issues with your family, your parents, when you were actually launching your business with Joe in terms of disapproval or trying to explain what in God's name you were doing?
I didn't with my family. So I'd already been away from my family for a bit in the Navy. And so, I'd go home for holidays and hang out. But my family didn't have much say either way or worry about kind of what I was up to. I was always kind of, making it work on my own. But I did have, especially when we went to the Philippines, we did have peers and even mentors that were worried about me and us, saying, look, you guys should really stay in the U.S. Why are you going over to the Philippines to build a business? At least one of you should stay here in the U.S. so that you can be on the ground and be a sales guy here in the U.S. And I think I think they were right. They were really trying to help us. And the way we were at that point trying to build our outsourcing company was kind of an old school method that we needed to reach out to as a B2B sale. We were looking for other, mid to mid-sized corporations that we could work with. And they were probably right. But from a lifestyle perspective, that was not a good fit. I wanted to travel. I wanted an experience. I wanted to kind of change my surroundings. And I couldn't stay. I wasn't interested in staying. And so even against their kind of better judgment, I left. We ended up making it work out, but I think in the short term, that would have been the better move for our business probably. But, you got to balance that lifestyle business thing. And that was a lifestyle move, I think.
That's pretty cool. I think one of the things that you see when you talk to other entrepreneurs, and I'm sure you have a ton of friends, when you look at more of the US-based entrepreneurs, what you see more of is kind of the Silicon Valley startups. They're going for broke. They're going for those $50 million exits, getting bought by Facebook or Google, going for IPOs. And then you look at more of the expat lifestyle where you're going to Southeast Asia, you're going to Chiang Mai or maybe down to Mexico. And you're more looking at, that's kind of more of the bootstrapped business. You're living more of a lifestyle business where you can create something different for yourself, not necessarily completely change the world, but change your world and help change other people's worlds as well.
I don't want to shut down someone's dream. So if they say, I'm going to build the next Facebook, I'm going to build the next Twitter, I'm going to build the next LinkedIn, then we need people that are doing that are actively working on that. But I think for most of us, that's just not a reality. That's not really going to happen. I think you get a lot of younger people, let's say anywhere from 19 to 24, that think they can build the next Facebook. And I love that enthusiasm. But I think there's real value in, swinging for singles and doubles and getting a couple of wins under your belt and doing it on your own. And one of the problems, I think, with the VC-backed startup game is that, it's a game. And that's both the benefit and a downside. These 20-year-old kids are viewing it like a game. And that lets them, I think, push the limits and boundaries to really aggressive growth. But it's also problematic in that it's a game to see who can raise more money, right? It's not about building a viable business necessarily. So they get caught up in the chase for, who can get their first angel round, who can get the VC companies interested. And that's, it's a different game. And I think that's not even about building businesses. And so sometimes a lot of startup founders get caught up in that. I think a real value to bootstrapping companies is they have to be valuable. Like they can't be future someday valuable. They have to be valuable now, today, to somebody. So if they're not valuable to someone, you're not making any money, and the business isn't viable and won't continue. And that's one of the things I think is fun about the bootstrapping crowd. I used to think that, and this is a problem with my thinking, but I used to think that the bootstrapping thing is just kind of normal. And the real success, the real interesting stuff are with the venture-backed startups. That's where the real game is played. We're just kind of over here goofing off with our bootstrap business. And I'm realizing that's not the case at all, that bootstrap businesses have plenty of opportunity to become, 8-9-figure exits. I know people that have done it. And I think there's opportunity in the bootstrapping world. Plus, it's something that a wider portion of people can do. So not everyone can be a bootstrapped entrepreneur, don't get me wrong, but a wider slice of the public can do that as opposed to building the next Facebook or Twitter. So there's more opportunity for a larger amount of people, I think, in bootstrapping.
It seems a bit more realistic. Your probabilities are a bit higher. For myself personally, I'm getting kind of worried about the whole funded startup world. It seems a lot like the dot-com bubble era, personally, where companies are building massive valuations, but they're not actually producing any kind of, at least immediate returns for the company. So I could see that potentially in the future leading into some issues, but not necessarily projecting that, not hoping that happens, but just something potentially could happen. I was actually working on one of those home run type apps, a sports-based social media app, and it just, unless you really get it to take off, it just dies, because that's how non-business based, where you're not getting revenue for something, you're just going for free users and advertising. That's kind of the game that's played, like you were saying.
That is the game that's played. And a lot of times you're going to lose. Most of the time it's going to lose. So what you don't get is guys like you aren't on Fox Business News. You know what I mean? Like talking about kind of like your failure to get traction or whatever. All they have are the people that just crushed it. Crazy ROIs, crazy user base growth, and like, they're just killing it. But there's, for every one of them, there's, 90 behind them that are in your situation where we took a stab at it, didn't work, right? So we don't see those guys. All we see are the ones that really took off. And I think behind the scenes, there's a hell of a lot more of you than there are of, the Zuckerbergs in the world.
Yeah, no one wants to watch a shitty superhero movie. So one of the questions I wanted to ask you about, after you were coming out of the Navy and working in loans, can you go a little bit deeper into that and kind of what your experience was in corporate America and what kind of pushed you to the edge of making the jump and going for it?
So I was making pretty good money working as a loan officer for a mortgage company. My soon-to-be or later-to-be business partner had gotten me in, right? So look, there's good money in this. It's interesting. And so I learned how to sell. I learned how to sell over the phone. And it was, I think, a really valuable skill, especially for an entrepreneur. You have to be selling yourself, your business, your vision to your team, to potential customers. You're always selling something. So that was a good skill to learn. And we realized, though, that we were making a ton of money for our boss, right? We started realizing, okay, here's what we're getting paid on. The splits were fairly straightforward. But when they were selling the loans off, they were getting a huge piece that we weren't seeing. And they were getting back-end points. I won't get too detailed, but they were making extra money that we weren't seeing. And we realized, wow, there's a lot more opportunity here than we're being presented with. And so probably out of greed, we realized that it would be a good idea to start this mortgage company and go off on our own. And so we didn't really know what we were doing. We set up this business. I think the only thing that we really had that was effective was our funnel for bringing in loan officers, and that had to deal with VA. So what we did was we would put ads on Craigslist. We had a VA do this for us, and we had a great onboarding process. So we were able to disqualify all the people that were looking to come on board and sell loans with us. So it was a disqualify machine, and we would move them down the funnel from top to bottom, and most of that was done through our VA initially, and then finally they get down to us. And then we had an onboarding process that would bring them on and help get them up to speed with doing loans. And so that was the piece of our business that was really working well. It was onboarding new loan officers. The rest of our business, there are a ton of holes and weaknesses, and our margins were too low, and it was a mess. But we'd really figured out that funnel well.
So you kind of knew how to build the Yankees, but you couldn't win with the team.
That's close, yeah.
What was your experience when you were saying that they kind of taught you? You learned how to sell. You learned how to sell yourself and your business. How did you go about learning to sell, and what were some of the thoughts that you had? I know some people view selling as kind of, I don't know, it just gives them the little heebie-jeebies. They don't like doing it.
It's evil.
Yeah, it's evil, right?
Yeah. It can be, right? Just like anything else. So, the real deal with selling is to find a value proposition that's right for the person that you're dealing with. And I learned a whole bunch of things, like the Ben Franklin close is something we look at a lot. Like, you put the positives on the left, the negatives on the right, and see which outweighs. Helping people understand their situation a little better, teasing pain points, and like showing how your solution matches their pain or, alleviates their pain. And then also the value it provides, not in terms of, this loan will be blah, blah, blah. No, but like how it touches their lives. Like, they'll be able to put money away for their kids' college fund and that kind of thing. So I think those were interesting things I learned. I think it was a bit more cutthroat sales. This is probably more of the icky sales. There were pieces of it that were icky to me. But I think, in terms of, learning how to work with other businesses and explain value propositions as far as what we're able to offer and how it matches their situation, it was extremely helpful. And it helps me today as well. I'd say, we do a bit of brokering today between buyers and sellers. And so it's a double-sided market. So we both have to, make sure that it's viable for both our, website buyers and website sellers. And so we're playing that game in between the two of them to try to determine the best fit. So there are times where, a website buyer comes along and they go, look, I love this site, or I'd love to check it out. And so it turns out it's not the best fit for them. So we say, look, that's not the best fit for your situation. I think you'd overextend yourself with this one. There's another one that might be a better option for you. So trying to help people find kind of the best sites or businesses for them to buy is kind of our position now. And I think I learned a lot from the mortgage business that's helped us today.
Yeah, I definitely want to get into a little bit more of AdSense Flippers and then Empire Flippers a little bit later on, your two sites, which you were working primarily on helping people to acquire new businesses, which you created or listed. But one of the questions I had for you, so you're doing this pretty early on in the internet game. How did you find a virtual assistant? How did you get really plugged into the Philippines and start with this process that would pretty much change your life?
Changed my life, that's for sure. So we'd done some Craigslist stuff for loan officers in the U.S. So we'd done some posting on Craigslist in different cities. And so we knew that there were people checking it out. So we did the same thing in the Philippines and Thailand and other places in Southeast Asia, India. And we'd post on Craigslist. We looked around a bit, and there were a couple of people talking about virtual assistants, but nothing like you see today. There were a couple of players out there but it was really fragmented and not very straightforward or clean. I remember their sites weren't very good, and oh God, if we'd have done something, for VAs back then, that would have been crushing it. But so we had to look for ourselves, and we didn't like the options, from the providers. So we put a ton of, offers on Craigslist, maybe 4 or 5 offers, and we got 20, 30 resumes in from people all over the world, India and Thailand and Philippines, and we dug through them. We looked for the person we thought was the best fit for us and what we needed. And the girl we ended up selecting happened to be from Davao City, Philippines. It just kind of worked out that way. We didn't care particularly where they were from, but she was just the best fit for our business.
And is that kind of what would pull you guys to Davao later on in your careers and your future?
It is. I get asked that. So why did you guys end up in Davao? And I love to say, it's because it's typhoon free here, because it's really emerging in terms of being a outsourcing provider, but that would all be after the fact. No, the real deal is we put all these ads out on Craigslist, and this one girl responded, and she was the best one, and she was in Davao. So that was our connection to Davao.
It's crazy. I've interviewed a couple entrepreneurs so far, and it seems like everyone has just that one little weird story. You meet someone on the bus, or you put out a Craigslist listing and randomly get someone in Davao, and it just completely changes what you're doing. You just kind of have to jump and go for it. How did you know when it was time to really, once the loan business that you were working on building was kind of dead, how did you know when it was time to jump to something else? And could you take us there a little bit?
Yeah, it was pretty straightforward. I was running out of cash, so I didn't really have a whole lot of options. Our mortgage business had been doing well previously, and I'd saved up some cash, as had Joe. But we were not doing well the last, 6 months, maybe even longer than that. It had started, declining. But I had been spending up my savings to, keep my train flowing. And my expenses were fairly high because we'd been doing really well previously, and I didn't cut those out. And there was a point at which Joe and I just said, yeah, man, we gotta end this. Unfortunately, this isn't working. So, I had to look for a job. So I want to make sure I found a good fit. I did find a startup-ish type company that was selling local SEO services to small and medium-sized businesses. So, companies like a locksmith or whatever, and helping them get placed on the internet. And this is back in 2007, 2008. And I found them, and they needed a sales manager to help them run a team of telemarketers. So I ended up joining up with them, and that was it. So I moved up a couple of times in their company because they were growing so fast that then they needed an operations trainer. So I moved into that, and then they needed an operations manager. I did that. Eventually became their director of operations over the course of a couple of years. So Joe and I think our entrepreneurial adventure in the mortgage business helped tremendously with this business because we took on this local SEO company as if it was ours. Like, we got in there and wanted to run it and make a big impact. We didn't think about being an employee or, clocking in and for our hours. It wasn't even like that at all. I would work crazy hours. I was there sometimes till midnight. Working crazy long hours. But it was because I believed in what we were doing, and I wanted to have an impact in the business and with our customers. And I viewed it as if it were my company. Turns out it wasn't. So I'm building value for someone else. And over time, Joe and I, that entrepreneurial bug started biting us again, saying, hey, we should probably get back to building our own business. And we're building theirs right now. And I'll tell you, it was a great experience because we just had a major failure with our mortgage business. And when you were as an entrepreneur or a business owner, like, you wear a lot of hats, right? And so going back to work for someone else where I got to take some of those hats off and just be responsible for my piece was wonderfully freeing. Like, it just freed a lot of worry and stress, whereas I could really focus in on my area. And so over time, we said, okay, that was great. Now we've kind of been responsible for our area. Let's go back to building our own business again. And that's what I think drove us to take that chance. When we saw we had a chance to expand our offshore operation for this company and actually run that piece of their business and eventually make it our own, we just thought that was too good of an opportunity to pass up.
I got two main questions off of that. So first of all, with eLocal listing, it seems pretty ideal for someone looking to start their own business. You got the experience working with SEO. You got the experience in the actual leadership components where you were working on managing people, both of which are huge in your business. Your business is now today in terms of getting traffic and managing your virtual assistants. Did you plan that out when you were looking for a company to work for? And then while you were there, you knew that you wanted to be an entrepreneur. What were you doing, or were you doing anything in terms of bootstrapping your life or cutting back on your expenditures to really try to save up some money and go for it again?
So, it's easy now to look back at some of the jobs I'd taken, some of the career paths I'd taken, and say, wow, a lot of those kind of line up to where I am today, right? And I go, wow, it seems pretty interesting that like the skills here and these skills here, they all apply to the stuff I'm doing today. But when I was in the moment years ago, there wasn't like some long-term plan, some super secret plan to get to this point. So no, when I took the job with that company, I thought it was an interesting company that I wanted to be a part of, but I didn't really know what it would turn into. I knew that, having management responsibility would be helpful. So I'll say this, I didn't know what it was going to become, but I knew that some of the skills that come out of that are great learning experiences. And so even today, when we take on projects, for example, we're not great at running teams of technical people, programmers, or working on software projects. We generally don't do terribly well financially when we get into those projects. But we've been spending some money to learn, right? So we'll take on software projects that can be expensive and maybe even losers for us in terms of ROI, because we think it's a valuable thing for us to learn as entrepreneurs and business owners, and we like the space, so we want to get better at it. So yes, we do take on projects that we think provide a great opportunity for us to learn, even when we're not sure if it's the return is going to be there with that one. The learning experience itself might get us to a point where we have skills that we can then apply to other things that we want to make money with.
Is that what you would recommend towards more non-technical founders that are looking to get into the software or tech space, that they work in contracting or they take internships or mentorship, mentee, I'm not sure the word, yeah. basically to work with other people to get their experience in terms of working with designers, working with programmers, so they can better play the field and stay in the game?
Absolutely. If I was young, definitely if you're in your early to mid 20s, I would absolutely learn how to code. There's no question. Design skills are important too. I think that's interesting. But I would absolutely learn programming, and not so much that I would necessarily do it as an entrepreneur later on, but so that I would understand it a bit better and be able to work with people and probably get things done a hell of a lot cheaper than as a non-technical founder. So especially if you're young, that's a skill you could learn. Even today, it's almost like I wish I could take a year and a half off and just teach myself some programming. And Joe and I talked about that. Hey, maybe it would be worthwhile, but I think our business is growing. What we would lose in business growth wouldn't be worth it in the meantime. So we're buying our way in. So we're spending some money to learn it.
Speaking of buying your way in, I know that your business AdSense Flippers, which you recently changed to Empire Flippers, was kind of a business based off of flipping websites, selling websites to people that were more interested in buying into the business and entrepreneurship field. Could you tell us a little bit more about how you got started with AdSense flippers and building websites in general?
Yeah, so our previous employer, that was our primary employer for the outsourcing company, started cutting back on us. And so we'd had new clients come on, but we hadn't fully replaced all their people when they quit completely. So we had these trained agents that were kind of sitting around with nothing to do. And I guess we were like, well, we could lay them off, but they're well trained. They've got good skills. Like, it just seems like such a waste. And we don't want to be that company either, right? So why don't we see if they can make us some money in the meantime? And eventually we'll replace them, or we'll put them on with another client that we pick up, right, over the next couple of months. So we had them building out small niche sites. And we tried a couple of things. And this is the one that actually stuck and seemed to work. We had them building out these niche sites, and they didn't make much money the first month. But the second month, third month, they started to pick up. And we realized these are profitable. And then we were about maybe 10,000 in on this project Joe and I had spent. And we realized it was making money, but we realized it would take a long time to kind of, get a return on that because we were trying to grow it. So they're becoming profitable, and they're profitable long term, but we want to scale it at the same time. That's an expensive proposition. So Joe and I came up with the idea of, why don't we sell them, realize the future profits today, and that'd be a great way to scale it out. We started scaling out the business by selling off sites to people that were interested in these profitable sites. And we, instead of I think what we did that was different is that we just started sharing everything about what we're doing and exactly how we did it. So here's exactly how we're building these sites, the exact process we use for keyword research. And that was a little, I guess, disruptive, you'd say, in the kind of niche side, or make money online space, the internet marketing space. Because most people put it behind a paywall. They give you a little bit of teaser information and then charge you an ebook for $79.95 to learn the rest. And we just thought, well, we didn't care because we had our outsourcing company that was paying the bills. And so this was a side project for us. It wasn't like we needed to make the money on the $79.95 ebook. So we said, why don't we just build the kind of business that we would want to do kind of for fun, that we just like to do. And so we just gave everything away for free in terms of information. And we also sold the site. So we said, here's exactly how to build them for free. Or if you've got cash and you don't have the time to figure out how to build them from scratch, you can buy them from us. That's a pretty straight up value proposition. And it covers kind of the spectrum, right? I don't have any money, but I got plenty of time. Okay, great. Here's our exact process. You can do it as well. To the people with plenty of money and no time, right? They're working 60 hours a week, 70 hours a week like I used to, but they've got the cash. Okay, great. I'll just buy the sites from you and buy in. And I think that was a real turning point for us in terms of, wow, we can run a business, a values-based business that is what we want to build. That is the type of business we want to build, or we'd want to be customers of. And that was pretty interesting. Before we were an outsourcing company, we thought we were still old school corporate. We thought that if we have a website and, this is our large organization and this is our company, and it wasn't very personal, that was a better approach. That's the company that businesses want to do business with. But we realized we could actually have some personality in our business, and it works just fine. People are, in fact, probably more interested in working with us that way. And that was, I think, a big aha moment for us.
Yeah, that's one of the things I've heard when talking to some of the more experienced people. It's like the more you give away, the more you do for free, the more people are going to reward you for it, the more kind of universe karma you're going to get in terms of growing your business, growing yourself, building your network and your connections. So you guys were basically you were helping people out by saying, this is how you guys can do it. But at the same time, people are checking this out and they're lazy. They want it to be easy, and it's not easy. It takes a long time. So you realize that you could actually sell it to them and make a decent bit of profit doing it that way. Is that something you would recommend? And how much would you say, how much content should you give away for free? What would be kind of like a split in terms of people trying to create an information product or something along those lines?
I'd be careful, with just give everything away for free. And we're big fans of free, and we use free in our business for sure. But there are people that give away free stuff that isn't valuable to anyone. And so they offer all this stuff for free, and they're like, I'm giving it away for free. Why is this not working for me? And it's because you need to give away something for free that's really valuable to people that they're looking for that isn't free today. So people are searching for this, that, and the other, and they are met with all these paid options, and you give them a free option, and it's better than the paid options. Now you're onto something, right? That's interesting. That's going to get people's attention. So I think it's important to not just give away stuff for free. It has to be things that are truly valuable to someone else that they're looking for, that they would be willing to pay for. I think that's helpful.
So you're working on this, you're building it, and you realize, oh, shoot, we might actually be onto something. At what point did you kind of realize that this is more where AdSense Flippers, where your business should go? And what kind of volume were you guys doing? Can you talk about some of the numbers?
Yeah, so we realized that we were starting to make a name for ourselves obviously in the niche site space, but also in the kind of the buying and selling space. People were starting to, pay attention, and we didn't realize kind of how big it had gotten, really. We ended up starting a podcast. It's the AdSense Flippers podcast, now the Empire Flippers podcast. And we didn't really know much about podcasting. We listened to a few and kind of picked up some tips. And we started realizing we're getting a good amount of downloads. We knew we had some visitors. And then we met at a meetup in Bangkok with a bunch of other entrepreneurs. And people kept coming up to us saying, hey, love your show. Listen to all your episodes. Or I've just been catching up on your episodes. It's fantastic. And we were like, wow, all these other people are other entrepreneurs, our peers are listening to our show. That's something, man. We're definitely onto something. And I think this was toward the end of 2012. So in 2012, our total business, I think, did a little over $400,000. And that's about a healthy split between AdSense Flippers and the outsourcing company. So about maybe a little over 200 each in 2012. And then in 2013, I think we did a little over 600,000. And again, it was pretty evenly split between the two, between Empire Flippers and our outsourcing company. So what we found, though, is that Empire Flippers has a much better profit margin. So our margins are much better with Empire Flippers than they are with the outsourcing company. So that's a better game. That's where we're spending most of our time as well, because that's the thing that we think has plenty of opportunity.
Yeah, you guys basically gained a great reputation in the internet space in terms of building high quality businesses and selling them. People really trusted you. So then they started to reach out to you and wanted to buy some other businesses, not just AdSense businesses, right?
Yeah, so we were selling AdSense site ourselves through 2012. And there was this big question. We'd bounced around for maybe almost a year selling, or telling ourselves, maybe we could allow other people to sell on our platform. We could be a marketplace for other people to sell. And we were kind of held back by the idea that what if we allow other people to sell their sites and people don't want to buy ours anymore? Aren't we just like cannibalizing ourselves? Like that's a scary prospect for us. Like, are we hurting our own business? Are we hurting our ability to sell our own? And finally we said, there's a huge opportunity there, though. I think people were getting sick of some of the other options that were out there in terms of buying sites. There were a lot of scams, and they weren't curated or vetted in any way, so anyone could list, right? You could list anything you want at any dollar price or any amount. And so we said, there's a real opportunity there. Let's allow people to sell with us. And this was in like March of 2013. And so we were not just doing AdSense sites. We were doing e-commerce sites. We're doing drop shipping sites. We're doing lead generation sites. And not just small kind of sites that were just starting out, 6 months old, 9 months old. These are businesses that have been around for years, full-on businesses with diversified traffic and monetization. Sites making $4,000 or $5,000 a month in net profit. And so we realized when we started listing those, we had people that wanted to buy them, and we were shocked that people were looking to spend $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 on these businesses. And we said, wow, we're really onto something here. I think there's a real opportunity. So we've really been promoting that and dropping other projects through the end of 2013 and into 2014. I think we did, for 2014 first quarter, we did over $250,000 in business sales just in 3 months. So, where our goal is to do $2 million in business sales in 2014. Now that's we get small. I don't count that as revenue. So we only get 15% of those deals that are sold, and that's what I would count as revenue. But still, I think there's a huge market here, and right now it's kind of in a position where individual kind of like web guys are buying businesses, they're building businesses, they're selling these businesses. It's kind of like in our little community, but I think there's an opportunity that's way outside of that, right? So if you think of places like Prosper, right, or Lending Club, or you have an opportunity to have a dashboard that you log into, decide where you want to put pieces of your money, look at your portfolio over time. I mean, those are, I think, great models for our industry. It's an interesting model for our industry where it's no longer you're flipping a site, you're looking at them as online assets or investments as part of a portfolio. And I think that's maybe like version 2.0 of kind of where our industry is going and definitely where we want to take it. So we've got some exciting stuff planned through 2014 and into 2015 that we'd really like to get accomplished. And one of our problems now is like, can we do this as bootstrappers? Is our kind of vision a bootstrapper goal, or should we kind of limit it? And so that's something we're kind of battling out right now. We're trying to figure out if we're going to be able to do this on our own.
How are you working on scaling that up with a two-sided market where you have to have the buyers and the sellers? What have you found is more important? I know most markets, like if you're working with eBay, once you get the buyers, the sellers will flock. How have you found it for your side?
So when we were starting off, we said, look, we've already got buyers. We've got people that are buying our sites, right? So it's pretty easy to introduce sellers because we already had the buyers or a collection of buyers. Whenever we put websites up for sale, a lot of times we'd have 10, 12 websites. These are smaller sites, $2,000 sites, sold in 24 to 48 hours. So buyers were there and the sellers knew that. And since we've been doing this for a little while, what we found is that it's much harder to find sellers and sites for sale, which sounds crazy to me because sellers, we're helping them make money. Like you would think they'd be all over the place. They'd be happy to list and have their sites up for sale. But it's not the case. We have way more buyers than we do sellers right now. So we're constantly on the lookout for sellers to see if they're willing to list their site, if their site is a good match for what we're looking for. We reject about 40% of the sites that attempt to get listed with us because they don't fit for a bunch of list of reasons, but they don't fit for whatever reason, and we have to reject them because we know generally what our buyers are looking for and kind of what is a good fit for our marketplace. So yeah, I mean it's a weird problem is that we have the buyers, people willing to buy the sites. We just we're constantly on the lookout for sellers in our marketplace. But you're right, it can be difficult because it's like running two different businesses at the same time, both the seller side and the buyer side, and they both have to be successful, to get that network effect, right, of both sides kind of blossoming and doing well. So we've got the buyers. We're really looking to fix the seller side problem right now. I'd like to know how much we could do if we had kind of an unlimited amount of sites available in different industries. Like last month we did like just under 100,000 in site sales, but that's about all we had available. Like there are times where we don't have enough businesses available for sale. What if we had an unlimited amount of businesses for people to choose from? I mean, 200,000 a month might be reasonable, and that's our problem. We've got an inventory problem. We're trying to fix that.
Well, I think you could certainly do 200 a month. I think your biggest issue is really going to be the fact that you're aiming a bit more towards the higher end businesses and websites. And with a lot of those, these people aren't just getting started. They really know what they're doing, and they're making pretty sizable amounts of profit on every site. So if they can just hold it, unless they really have to have that cash right now, they're making so much money every year that it's almost better for them. Versus with some of these smaller sites like Flippa, there's going to be a lot more sellers because they're selling things that are in a lot lower quality, really they're not making as much money from it, so they don't have as much invested in it. If you need 10 grand for a car or 20 grand to put down a payment on a house, it's going to be easier. What if you guys were to not lower the bar per se, but lower just slightly what you were aiming for, but keep the vetted aspect of it into it? So kind of taking what Flippa does, but not going into the super low quality, maybe keeping it at 10 grand or something like that, and building off of that to say, guys, these are great sites which we've vetted. That would easily increase your sellers, I think, and the buyers just want to buy.
It definitely increased our volume, I think, potentially. Let me tell you something, though, that we've kind of figured out in doing business that you always want to chase, and like you said, like we're reaching after kind of the upper end. Well, that's so relative, right? So the upper end for what? So like if I talk to a guy, I had him on our show, Drew Sanaki, right? And so they are moving down into the lower end, right? They're a private equity group that's now in the lower end of buying businesses, and their lower end is 500,000 to 3 million, right? So they're like, this is a really interesting, like kind of lower end space. There's a whole bunch of opportunity here. And I'm thinking, lower end, man, the guy's $2 million business. That's not lower end. So I think it's all relative. So I think for the just getting started, I want to make money online, guys, you're right. Maybe like the $4,000 or $5,000 sites are more appealing and it's more available to everyone. But the truth is that I'm not just trying to appeal to any particular group, right? And we're realizing that there are plenty of people in the $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 space that are looking to buy those businesses that aren't just getting started out. And to be honest with you, I don't care. I don't care if people are just starting out or if they've got the cash to do business at that level. I want to move up the value chain, not down. And so we know that for our problem customers, there's a much higher chance that someone who spends, let's say, $500 with us is going to be a problem customer than someone who just spent $50,000. Now, it doesn't mean that everyone who spends $500 is a problem customer, but the likelihood is much higher at the lower end. So moving up the value chain, your customers across the board, buyers and sellers, are much more agreeable. It's much easier to do that type of business than it is, a $2,000 site as opposed to like an $80,000 site.
I think that's actually a really good point, going up the value chain, because then you're having the higher, I didn't really think about that too well. You're having the higher sales, which means you're making more per sale. You have more money to dedicate to actually acquiring customers. And generally, more people are going to return a bicycle than a BMW, so you don't really have to worry as much about the hassles. I like your points.
I think there's a problem too where, especially kind of in the online space, it's like this battle or race to zero, the fact that people undervalue kind of what they're doing. And so you see it where people, are selling an ebook and it drops down. Finally, they're selling ebooks at like $7, right? And like, what the hell is going on? I mean, you have to support that. People are going to have questions and they're going to want to have all these questions about, what the ebook says and how it works and what's my refund policy. And it's not worth me sending an email for the $7 ebook. Like, it's not worth me responding I just won't respond. Like, you know what I mean? And so, but you think that, oh, well, that's my audience. I think a great example of what I'm trying to say is there's a company called Qualaroo, and they do kind of like, it's a little widget on your site, and it ask questions and select. You can put your email address in, and they'll help you get opt-ins. But they were targeting kind of the blogging community and not getting much traction. Their price point was really low, and they weren't getting a ton of traction. They ended up getting bought out by a guy who said, you know what, we're going to add just a couple of features, not change the feature set all that much, but we're going to target it toward funded startups. And we're going to help them. We're going to position it differently. So they went after a different market, a much smaller market with more money, and increased the price like 4x or 5x, like made it much more expensive and started doing really well with it. So they weren't targeting, bloggers at, maybe a $20 price point or $5 a month price point. They were targeting funded startups at a $50 price point or whatever per month and doing much better. So I think that for them, it was a positioning thing, right? It was the same product. They just weren't reaching the right audience and speaking their language. So basically what I'm saying is I think moving up the market or kind of changing the tone can really improve what you're getting. And a lot of entrepreneurs think, oh, I need to go down market. I need to be cheaper. I need to be cheaper and compete on price. And I think competing on price is generally a horrible path to take. You should always be trying to move up the value chain and not competing on price to just deliver more value than your competition.
I think that's a huge point that you just brought up for bootstrapped entrepreneurs. It kind of reminds me of the difference between the actual, like we were talking about earlier, the funded startups, which are going, they really want to hit everybody. They just want this to be a mass effect type of business. Whereas if you're working on a bootstrap startup, your niche is single 60-year-old ladies who go to do yoga on Wednesdays, and you're really narrowing it down or something. You're trying to make sure that you have as much value as you can possible, as target as you can possible to make yourself competitive.
Yeah, and make sure that audience has cash, right? Make sure the audience is a buying audience in my space. I think that's really important too.
Perhaps their husbands just died and they were millionaires, something along those lines. Someone who's got some money to spend.
Little old ladies with cash, man. I don't know. You sound like one of those. I don't know. That seems a little sketch, buddy. Seems a little sketchy.
Okay, something along those lines. So I really want to thank you. You've been really amazing, Justin. And I had really two more questions for you that are both kind of related. So first, how have you managed to keep your relationship with Joe intact? How have you managed to have the partnership work? I know that's something people really struggle with. And then after that, let's hear your pitch for Davao and really getting people out to the Philippines. What would you say?
Well, first off, who said our relationship's intact? What are you talking about, man? We're business partners. It's never intact. It's always on the edge. It's tattered and broken. And yeah, man, really partnerships, and you said this before, other entrepreneurs said this, it's like a marriage. It's like a very intense marriage. And so we fight, we bicker, we have really, knock down, drag out fights. And I say that jokingly, but like seriously, like we really fight. But it's generally, we've been in business for a long time now. So our fights are generally for the betterment of the business. And so we both feel fairly passionately about a topic, and we think there's a different approach or different ways to go about getting that done. And that's where a lot of our conflict comes in. Also, the fact that we've been friends for forever, 15 years or something, it's like crazy. So we have a lot of old stuff too. But knowing each other that long and being in business for so long, you just kind of start to get over some of the personal stuff. But it's not always easy, man. I'd say our relationship goes back and forth. I'd say even 2 years ago, there was a couple of months where we really struggled and we weren't speaking to each other all that well. We communicated. We did a podcast together, but it was a bit rougher than it is today. So, you go through these kind of ups and downs. We did a podcast on the roller coaster of entrepreneurship. I think there's something similar when it comes down to partnerships. There's going to be a roller coaster. There's an ebb and flow that comes to partnerships. One of the things we have thought about a lot is kind of like balancing work. And so Joe, there'll be times where Joe kind of goes off the rails a bit and is not really as focused or as driven, doing kind of, handling his side of the business. And maybe a couple of weeks goes by, maybe a month, and then I start beating him up about it. And the same thing for me. And then, like, as much as I'm beating him up, 3 months later, I do the same thing. I just kind of am less focused, not really getting things done. And he kind of reins me in, right? Beats me up for it. So I think that's the benefit of a partnership. If, 1 + 1 = 4, that's beneficial. So if we can argue and kind of come to a better conclusion than either one of us would have had on our own, that's a sign that we're heading in the right direction.
What would you recommend to entrepreneurs in terms of really finding a great fit, finding a great long-term partner for their business? I know it's amazingly challenging to find someone, your goals lining up. How would you really recommend that someone goes about this, and what should they really avoid?
Oh, I wouldn't do it the way we did it. And we just kind of said, hey, let's just do business together. Let's do it together. We'll be in this together kind of thing. And, intellectually, everyone knows that you should choose a co-founder or a partner on the basis of their merit, their skills, how well those skills apply, to your own, how well you guys can balance each other out or add value to each other. But realistically, what I see a lot of, especially, new entrepreneurs do, is kind of team up with a buddy, because it's scary to do it alone. It's scary to build your own business. So my best advice, and I don't know if people will follow this because it's definitely a more difficult path, I think, is to build something viable on your own first. Get it started, get it rolling, and then once you already have traction on your own, not amazing traction, you're not balling, right? You're just getting started, but you've got a little bit of traction, then find a co-founder if you want or need one. You could also look at hiring for skill sets that you're weak at, but if you want a co-founder, find one when you've got some value already built up. And then you're in a position to where you can shop for the right person, right? Because you've already got some value. A great person to talk to you about this, and I think who did it really well, is Dan over at WP Curve. When he picked his co-founder, he'd finally gotten some traction with his WP Curve business, went out and shopped for the right guy, found the right guy that matched his skill sets. And I think you come from a better position of power when you do that, and you're going to take the time to find the right person because you know what you're losing by giving up, a good chunk of your business to a partnership.
Okay, so date before marriage. That's what I'm getting here.
That's it, man.
I want to thank you so much for being on the show, Justin. You've been just an awesome guest. You've really helped my audience really understand what goes into growing a business from nothing through failure and changing your life and really getting out there and living the dream or something close to it.
Well, thanks, Matt, so much for having me on. Really appreciate your time and your listeners' time. If anyone wants to find out more about me, they can check me out on Twitter at Empire Flippers, or obviously at our site, empireflippers.com. We hang out there a bit too, so come by and say hi.
Yeah, guys, check it out. He's got some pretty great content, and of course, that'll be in the show notes, businessandbootstrapping.com, session 6. I want to thank you guys for tuning in, and of course, thank Justin, who's over in Davao City, for managing to get on the podcast.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, thanks, Justin. Have an awesome day. Hopefully, I'll get to meet up with you sometime in the future.
Sounds good, boss.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to the show and hope you really enjoyed it. You can check out more great podcasts and blog posts at businessandbootstrapping.com. And I can't wait to talk to you guys soon. See ya.